Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. It's time for the tip on this Good Friday.
How are you feeling, girl?
Honey, it's a brand new day. Let me tell you, girl, it's a brand new day. So we're going to start this thing all right.
Welcome to Tip on Top of the Tip. I am Zenitra Perry.
And I am INEZ Chimangariso.
It's a brand new day. Like, I done made it to Friday. I was like, I don't even have no job, and I'm glad today is Friday. Like, this is just...
Well,
That's because
that means you're doing it to
you work harder. You work harder.
You're doing it to yourself.
How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I survived back to school, and the kids are in school. So these days feel amazing. They feel amazing.
Peace,
I feel like
quiet.
I'm swapping places with my teacher friends. Like, y'all, let me tell y'all in, because boy, them summers was rough. I'm sorry, but here to get mine and everybody else's.
That is funny. Yes, I'm excited to be here for the tip today because I'm excited about the tip, y'all. But we gonna start this thing all right with the value, okay?
So we go ahead and throw this in our little randomizer. See what we get.
So if you're unfamiliar, we do a value at the beginning of every tip. It's a corporate value, but it's usually a very big life value too. So Z randomizes it in the randomizer, and then we spit one out and see what the value is going to be.
So today's value is honesty.
Let me tell you something. Like, honesty is a very high value of mine, right? So much so that my daughter's name is really meaning basically honesty. My daughter's name is True. And to me, it's the truth. Like, it's really, to me, it's about telling the truth to others. And that's important because it requires you to be able to tell the truth to yourself, right? And to me, people who having the value of honesty means that in some way you are principled, right? There's certain principles that you live your life by, and one of them is being able to own up to, right, the things that are great and the things that are not so great, right? And being able to be transparent sometimes, and really, I mean, it gets down to the vulnerability of it, right? Like, with those who are important to you, right? And then people who may not even be important to you, right? Because if you're a principal, it don't matter who you're talking to, right? If honesty is really a value for you, then you're going to tell the truth either way. And that's how I am. Like, for me, I'm like, it's such a high value of mine that if I have an inkling that somebody is not honest with themselves, and even if they're honest with themselves, if they're not honest with others, right? If they're not willing to be in some way vulnerable and transparent, it makes it very hard for me to allow them to lead me, right? You cannot guide me. It's very hard for me to even really listen to what you're saying. Like, I just can't do it. And that's in the workplace, right? And in my life, really. Like, I'm just like, I'm already an independent type of person, but the people who I allow to give me advice, right? The people who I allow to give me direction, the people who I allow to lead me or guide me are people who I know are honest at their core, like you, boo. Like, exactly. Okay. Listen. So what does honesty mean to you?
So honesty is my number one core value, as it is. I think we've covered truth before, and there's obviously a connection there between truth and honesty, but honesty is it for me. And it's directly tied to a very early conversation that my mother had with me about some challenges that she was facing when I was like 9 years old. And for her to be transparent and honest with me about that situation, and then reaffirm and reassure me in my capabilities, like, that is my foundation. So I'm always in a space of being honest with myself, and that's really where it starts. I need to know what I like, what I don't like, what I'm interested in, what I'm not interested in, why I did a thing, why I didn't do a thing. And I choose to show up to places where I can be honest. And because that, to your point, it does represent vulnerability. Honesty 100% shapes how I see the world. Like I am seeking truth, right? Like I'm always trying to understand the truth about a thing. And it's not a single truth, right? I understand that there can be many truths that exist at the same time. But I have no space in my life for any type of false living, any type of false perceptions. And to your point, I'm able to key in on it very quickly. I will say that I start out from a place, because I view the world, or I enter the world from a place of honesty. It shapes my perspective. And I assume that what you are bringing to me is honesty as well.
Yes.
However, if and when it should present itself that the things that you are sharing aren't quite adding up, and it looks like there is some dishonesty, I am out.
Oh,
I feel like I am a very welcoming and accepting person. I can accept any and everyone as long as you are living in your truth. It's an opportunity for me to learn from you. It's an opportunity for me to grow, for me to gain understanding about lifestyles that I may not have experienced. And so I'm accepting. However, if you bring someone to me that isn't you, there's no space for you in my life. Like I have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to dishonesty. And for me, it's about your character, right?
Yes.
I'm not even in this space of like trying to catch people in lies. Like I don't do that, not even, I can allow for a little exaggeration. Like, okay, girl, did it really go down like that? Like, but okay, but like, maybe some of that is
that's how we just do as a people.
Right, as humans.
Don't exaggerate, okay?
So like that I get, but people who are trying to live the life of someone else, or who are trying to present themselves in a way that isn't truly them, that's kind of, 100% where I draw the line. And it also shows up in like, how I parent. I'm not a restriction type of parent. I want to expose them, or I don't want to expose them, but I understand that they will be exposed to different things. And so it's about having truthful, honest conversations to help give them the framework to understand, what's happening, but always from a place of understanding different people or different contexts, but then also reminding them of like what's honest and what's true. And then that shows up for me at work too, as a leader. I'm going to be transparent with my team. I'll even be transparent to say, okay, now certain things you're not supposed to know. So, I can tell you this amount and this is what I can't tell you.
Right.
Or, I can't tell you anything beyond that. Or this is the direction that we're going in, and try to be as honest and upfront with them. And even when it comes to giving feedback, your girl's going to give you the truth, because I really want you to see the honest or the truthful version of yourself, so that most people are interested in improving and being better. So why would I sugarcoat and have you in a place of deception where you think you're doing well when you're really not? I think that was one of the more rewarding situations in my career, where I've had to have I had a conversation with someone, and they just weren't understanding why they were being passed up for opportunities. And I share with them, like, these are the things, that you're lacking, and let's create a plan for you to improve upon them. And that person shared with me, like, this is the first time anyone has ever said that to me. Well, that's interesting, because people been saying it to me about you. You know what I mean? Like, not to me, but, leaders have conversations about, their teammates, and not in a gossipy kind of way, but whether it's from a skill set perspective, or there's new opportunities coming about, like who on your team can do this, and someone may have experience with you, and the other person will throw your name out there like, hey, like, would so-and-so be good for this? And the leader may say, hey, maybe they need some growth in this area. Why are you not communicating that back to your team member? Like, that level of dishonesty, I don't have any space for as a leader, as a parent, as a flat out human. So honesty is number one for me. And like I said, it starts with how I speak to myself, and then how I shape the world, and then how I show up in the world.
I love that. Like, as you were talking, I was thinking about how the reason why I feel like, as someone who is very much in tune with honesty and values it a lot, I really am okay with being honest, and I'm okay with receiving honesty, right? And so I was writing down, I was like, honest people are okay with being honest and receiving honesty. And usually people who are not okay with either one of those, there's a place where you're not usually being fully honest with yourself. Right? Like, because what I've noticed is, you know, in being a coach, there's a whole nother level of honesty that comes, right, internally with yourself, right? And in order to be able to really get down to the why am I this way, right? Why am I reacting this way? Why am I not reacting a certain way, right? Why is something triggering to me, right? Or not? You have to be honest with yourself at a level that most people aren't willing to touch. Right? Because they're almost afraid of the unraveling. Right? And that's what honesty does. It's gonna unravel. Okay, it's gonna unravel some things, right? And when you are a person who values honesty like I am, I'm okay with the unraveling. Like, I'm like, honey, let's get to the root of this so that we can either uproot it, we're gonna put it back together. When we put it back together, it's gonna be true, right? It's gonna be the real thing, because it's really important to me. And in work, I remember when I had my my interview, not my last job, but the one before that, he was like, one of the people who interviewed me, he was like, the reason why I hired you was because in your interview, when I asked you, what do you do when, you know, you can't figure something out, right? If you can't figure out how to do something, what do you do? And he was like, you were like, I just Google it. He was like, most people aren't going to be just like, I just Google it, right? They're going to give me like this profound answer of like the things that you're doing. Like, and he was like, you just Google it. He was like, that's real, right? Like, you know, like, and I remember, you know, managers have told me, like, one of the things we like about you is that you are okay with not knowing things and telling people you don't know. And the reason why I'm okay with that is, again, I'm okay with the unraveling. I'm okay with sharing this honesty and being just truthful and giving it to you and be like, I don't know, can you tell me? There's no, I feel like sometimes when you are not okay with honesty, there's something you're protecting. Right? You're usually in protection mode, and it's usually probably trying to protect yourself. Right? And I don't even know why. Actually, I feel like I do know why. Because I know that the protecting is not as valuable as the truth.
Never.
It's never as valuable as the truth. Right? Because the protecting is usually going to hold me in a space that is it's not unrealistic. I'm thinking unrealistic, but it's holding me stuck in a space, right? If I can release the protecting, which is what I'm completely okay with. I feel like I was before, but now I'm actually coaching and getting coached. I'm like, honey, just let it all fall. Like, I'm okay. Like, because I know it's keeping me from things, whether it is in, you know, my business or if it's in my life, it's keeping me from the things that are for me. Right. And so I'm like, let's get to the bottom of it. I'm okay with the honesty. I'm okay with giving it, and I'm okay with receiving it.
Yeah, it's very restrictive. It doesn't allow you to go and explore and do all the things that you want to do because you're trying, to your point, you're stuck, you're staying in one particular place. The thing that I always attach honesty to is self-awareness. So I had a situation with one of my kids this past week where they told why they did a particular thing, and it was something very nuanced. And I was just so amazed that they knew enough about themselves to be like, oh yeah, I do this because X, Y, and Z. And because self-awareness is just like critically important to me, because if you want to change anything about yourself, you need to know what you are doing, where you're trying to go, and what you need to be doing so that you can make those shifts. But what really was revealed to me was that self-awareness also comes from a place of safety, right? Like, my child felt safe saying like, oh, I do that because X, Y, and Z. So when you talk about, you know, being dishonest, being stuck, being protective, you're only protective when it's unsafe.
That's the truth.
So if you want people to be honest with you, You have to have a safe space for them to show up and tell you why they do a particular thing. They need to be able to tell you that I can't do this or I don't know how to do this, and not fear what the repercussions are going to be. As you were talking, it also made me realize the connection between kind of being okay with the unraveling or not knowing, because you know that that's in one particular area, but you're self-assured in all these other areas that you don't mind this little piece falling apart. Like, oh, that doesn't make me who I am. At the core, I am this. And then maybe there's these different branches, and maybe that branch is weak and we need to prune it and cut it off and let it grow back stronger. And that's okay. But that's because you have been built up strong in safe environments where you are assured, where you're self-assured, you have your own identity outside of what that one thing is. You not knowing how to do a particular task, your identity is not tied to that. So you don't need to protect that, right? You know who you are at the core. And so it's interesting how, identity, self-awareness, safety, all of that stuff is really combined. And you have to have all of them. And when there's a break in any one of those, and that's how you end up protecting, that's how you end up coveting, that's how you end up being dishonest. You don't feel secure in sharing the truth, or unsecure in kind of your identity.
This is the truth. Y'all can tell honesty is important to us. Like, and you know what? It's funny. It's always been important to us. It is at the bottom of our friendship. Like, this is the root of. It really is. Like and it's great, because that's also why I think, especially in relationship and even in in work environments, if honesty is not the culture of your company, right? It's not the culture of your team, and it's not the culture of your friendships or your relationships, there is a lack of safety. And that brings stress, right? And then also it can't be long standing, right? Because the other thing is, situations will change, people will change, things will change, right? Time will go on, and the truth will change, right? And so if you are someone who's honest, like for me, I can be honest in all stages, right? And sometimes even in that honesty, in a certain stage, it will, if you're with someone who's also honest, right, with regard to our friendship, if you're with somebody who's also honest, then even if we aren't aligned, we can still come together, right? But when you're not aligned and you're not honest, right, there's the distancing that happens, right? There's the strife, or there's the strain, or there's the stress, because there is that lack of safety, right? And as I'm thinking about even in the corporate world, like sometimes people leave environments, and you have the the attrition and that type of stuff happening because there's a lack of honesty. And when people move to a certain level, they may realize like, oh yeah, honey, I don't know what this is not real up here, right? So they're like, well, I got to go, right? Or and it's important to have that honesty at every level, because sometimes the higher you get up, the more you're not on the ground, and you have a higher view, a more strategical view, but you also have to get to the root of like what's true, and not allow yourself to what is that? Get too what is this? I can't think of saying something about get too big for your britches. That's what it is. Like get too big for your britches. Like, you still got to be able to be honest with the people and honest with yourself, even though you have this seniority.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, and it also has to be rooted in kindness too, because some people will use the value of honesty to be rude, to be mean, to be cruel to one another. And number one, we don't play that over here, okay? We're going to treat each other with kindness, with respect at all times, so that people can receive the honesty that you're sharing with them. You have to be intentional with your words. You have to choose them wisely. You have to understand your audience, because being honest isn't enough if you're using it as a weapon, right? Anything taken to the extreme becomes error. So you can take honesty to the extreme if you're not wrapping it with kind of the right emotion of, you know, being intentional, being kind, understanding why you're sharing this information with someone. If it's just to tear them down, then what's the point, right? Like, you don't get a gold star for being honest when you're mean with it. So please be kind with your
Yes.
honesty.
Please
Please be
do.
kind. So today,
Honey,
tip on top of the tip, girl.
it's time for the tip, honey. The tip today is we was founded years ago. Okay. This tip is so hilarious because so if you were in college in the early 2000s, right, then you know about the Kanye West reign during that time, like album after album, and every album was centered around college in some way. It was like the dropout, late registration, graduation. So it was like, it's like the soundtrack of my college years. And there's a skit that he has on late registration where he is alluding to kind of the way that fraternities do when they are probating or they are, you know, what we call at set. Now, you don't know the specifics, honey, go do some research. Like, but where they talk about, like, you know, the foundations, right? The foundations of the organization, right? And so, but his skit is hilarious. If you have not heard it, you have to go listen to it. But we use just the part of we was founded years ago, right? And the way we use it is very similar to the way that he's using it in the album with regard to like you as an individual, right? You was founded years ago, right? And some of the things about you are just at your core, right? They are just the root of who you are. Like we were talking about earlier, honesty is just at the root. Like we was founded years ago on honesty. Like just that's how it is. And when we say that to each other, for me, it's really like talking about like you are today who you've always been, right? And the thing, like usually, like recently, we've been using it to remind each other, right, that even the thing that may seem like a struggle or something that a problem that you're trying to solve or something you're trying to do, right? You need to remind yourself that this is a skill you already have, that you're already good at it. And so lean into that. Like, remember that you was founded years ago on this. Like, just it's not even questionable. And then on the flip side of that, like also with regard to being honest with yourself about some of the things that may be, you know, hindering you, right? Maybe hindering you. The things that are hindering you may still be there and they're a part of your makeup and you need to be considering them, right? Because it's like, are they useful right now? But in the consideration of them, you have to remember that we was founded years ago, right? And so that is in you. It's been in you for years. So you're gonna have to pay attention to it, look at it, right? Otherwise it could be a blind spot, and handle it, right? Because it may be stopping and blocking you today.
Listen, when INEZ says this, because this is an INEZ line. A lot of these are Zenitra lines, but this one right here is an INEZ line. And it is so funny because it is a non-traditional affirmation.
Yes.
It is intended to, as to her point, to remind you of who you are, because I feel like a lot of times, that at least for us, we're living in the future and we're creating businesses, processes, products, services to serve a particular need. And the thing that gets in the way is fear. Mm-hmm. And we begin to, well, what if I don't end up fill in the blank? Mm-hmm. And it's like, wait a minute, girl, you've been doing this your whole life. Mm-hmm. Your entire, as long as I've known you. When I step away from you, you do these things.
Right.
Not just when I'm here looking at you. See, this is who you've always been. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny to me because the first time I kind of had this piece of awareness, your mom said it to me about you. Oh, right. Like we were chatting, and this was years ago. But she was like, "Girl, INEZ is the same person she was as a baby," and that was clearly I was young and had kids at that point. So I'm like, I never thought about that in my head. You know, we are constantly being formed. One of my current phrases is people don't change, they evolve, right?
Mm-hmm.
So change is really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to take someone who's not ambitious and make them ambitious. You
Mm-hmm.
make them to be consistent, but
Mm-hmm.
that internal drive, it's really hard to find that, trauma aside, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about people who were in these like really crazy situations and had to come out of it and relearn some new things, but you've been who you are for a long time, for better or for worse.
Amen.
And you need to be self-aware and know when to lean into, you know, the things that make you who you are, as well as know when to kind of pull away from them.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, the tip is intended to remind you of the great things that you've already accomplished, how you show up in the world, how you've always
Mm-hmm.
shown up, whether it's, girl, you are always the one to make everybody laugh. Like, please stop. You know, we'll do this thing. We're like, well, I didn't want to tell anyone what I was going through because I didn't want to make anyone upset. And you're just like, nobody sees you like that. Like, where did this image of you come from?
Mm-hmm.
You was founded years ago as the
Right.
funny one in the group. You're always going to be the funny
Mm-hmm.
one, but so we will absolutely hold space for you to be other things. No one's going to change the image or perception they have of you because you have to step outside of kind of, you know,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that profile that you've given yourself. So it is 100% intended to be an affirmation, to remind
Mm-hmm.
you of who you are, what you're capable of doing, all the things that you've already done to pull you out of that space of fear. So it can
Mm-hmm.
be used, you know, for self-improvement or whatever to get better, but that ain't how we using it over here. We are using it to make you remember, to help you recall the greatness that already exists within you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like it is. And you know what, when I think about like sororities and fraternities, right? When I think about sororities and fraternities, you know, the lineage that comes out of these organizations, right? It feels almost like ancestral, right? Like when you think about like the things you think about when you think about your ancestors, right? I think about the same thing when I think about like our sorority, right? It's just the women who have come out of this sorority are extraordinary, right? Like they are, you know, almost superhuman in the things that they're accomplishing, right? And doing. And I say that because when he was doing this skit, and it is real, and what we learn, you know, as a part of being in these organizations is how you were founded, right? And that is important to know, right? In my mind, it just like, why did this just come up again? So Zia, I were just talking about a situation with her daughter, right? And how like basically like Z was affirming her, like, who tells you who you are, right? And she was like, me and who else? You, meaning her mother, right? And why is that? Because her mother founded her, right? Like I founded you years ago, right? You was founded, and this is who you are. Like, and so it doesn't matter who says differently. You have to remember, right? And even as I think about it, it's the same thing with regard to sororities and fraternities. It's like whatever is happening in 2023, right? In here, like what is most important is to remember who founded us and how we were founded, because that's always going to be able to give you direction and vision and grounding, right? Like, and it's so important to have those things because life can get very tumultuous, and you can feel like, because you're living in it, that is new, right? Like it's just like, oh, nobody has gone through this before. Like I'm doing all, and it's like, no. Number one, you was founded years ago, but also there are so many people whose shoulders you stand on, who have already had the victory, right, in this thing. And you just need to remember that you was founded years ago, but the reason why you were even founded is because of these people, right? And so it's important, like in the level of affirmation is it multiplies, right? Because it's like, yes, I was, but I am only because they were too. Right. So that's what I think about.
Well, the thing that stood out to me, and you connected it to being like ancestral, is the thing that you said to me as you were recalling it was like, you sound just like your mother.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, so baby, you were founded, you know, in 2016, but your mother was founded when she was founded by her mother, who was, you know, this was instilled in her by her mother and her father, like years ago, like literally years ago. You aren't even limited to your life in your founding. Your life has connections beyond. And to your point around things feeling like in this current day, like, you know, like what is happening, like this is crazy, and thinking back, I remember, so when I moved to New York, I was the only one in my family that lived there. No one else had moved there before, as far as I knew. And it wasn't until, you know, decade or years later into living into New York that I found out that my great grandmother used to live in New York. And I was like, what? Like how did that happen? And it was an unrelated story. My grandmother was telling me the story about her father passing and how after an accident, he stayed alive for 2 weeks waiting for his mother to come. And once he saw her, she passed. I was like, well, where was she coming from? She's coming from New York. New York? Like, why was she in New York? Oh, she went to New York for work because there wasn't enough work in the South. So I went to New York for work. So I'm reliving or retracing the path of my ancestors. And so I know there's that quote, I am my ancestors' wildest dreams, but I add to that, I am my predecessors' greatest work. Because people put in work for me to be here.
Girl, you got to run that back. Because I had to think about it. I was like, wait a minute. Yes.
Not only am I my ancestors' wildest dreams, I am my predecessors' greatest work. We stand on the shoulders. This is the work that they put in. Like I'm not even my own, because years ago we was founded. And so it's not even just about your parents, but I think about, you know, our high school and the teachers who held us to a high standard, the Miss Dunlaps, the Mr. Rivers, like, you know, the Coach Styles, like they had an expectation for us and that they reminded us of every day. That's part of our founding and whatever, you know, legacy that they bring in with them. So we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. We pay homage to those who poured into us. That is a part of the founding. So how dare you get over here and feel like you can't do something?
Yes, honey, how dare you? How dare you? Okay, how dare you? Look, honey, y'all, you was founded, okay? Don't forget that you was founded, because it really, and I feel like everything we talk about is an affirmation in some way. Like this is a thing. And to your point, it's a very it's always an unconventional. Like every tip is an unconventional affirmation. But it is relevant to who we are and to our culture and our upbringing. And for me, it resonates more, right? Because of that. Like it resonates more because of that. So use this as an affirmation. Tell some people, you know, remind some people that they was founded years ago, right? And so whatever the fears that they may have, whatever skills they feel like they don't have to overcome the challenges in their life, or you may not have to overcome the challenges in your life today. Because even as I think about, like, honey, just even like building a business, right? Like this is very new for both of us. Being a full-time entrepreneur, right, is very new for both of us. However, we have built so many things.
Amen.
Right? We have built so many things, and out of nothing, right? Like when I think about like just the communities that we built when we went away to school, right? And the friendships that were formed, the skills that we learned, being like you being in New York, me being in Philly by ourselves, hours away from, you know, family, the things that you learn at work, right? To be able to be a VP, right? Like, you know, to be able to manage and run others. Like I feel like for me specifically, sometimes I take that for granted because it has become so easy for you to do that you almost don't see it as like, oh, no, this is a skill and I can do this. And here's the evidence. Like, that's one of the things that I've been doing recently is like, this is my evidence book, y'all.
Come on,
So every day I write down the evidence of who I am becoming, right? What I see today that is a reflection of her, right? And the reason why that's important is because the more evidence you can find of who you are already, the more confidence you can walk in. And the more confidence you can walk in, the more you can just move aside any emotions and just do, right? And be, right? So in this, to me, you was founded is an affirmation in like, here's the evidence, right? Here's the evidence that you can already do this. You already have this in you, and there's evidence of you using this skill, of you using these things in order to create things in your life. Lead into the evidence and move forward confidently, right? Yes. Like, that's it. That's all. Like, move forward.
But you have to have the evidence, and that's so important. To your point of not only the evidence, not only are your skill sets easy to overlook or not pay attention to, your evidence is easy to overlook too. Because I remember when I was in a situation, like when I got divorced, I was like, oh my gosh, how did I get here? Let me take a look at my life and see how I got here. Because clearly this was not on the success checklist. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I was searching for how did I get divorced? But what I found was the evidence of who I am. And that was way more powerful than trying to answer some question about something that did not work out. And so being connected to that evidence, like I didn't see it when I was in the thick of it because I didn't have my evidence book. I should have been having the evidence book since I was 19, 20. When your kids go to college, give them an evidence book so they can start
okay.
So they can remember, years ago when they were founded, who they were.
Yes.
But that evidence is so critical. So we would love to hear from you guys. What are some of the affirmations that you have that you remind yourself of your founding whenever you get into these challenging situations?
Absolutely. And let me know, what were you founded on? Like, we were founded on honesty. Okay. The value was honesty. Today, that's definitely something we were founded on. What were you founded years ago on? Okay. Let us know. So I love it, y'all. I'm excited. Y'all have a great week and we will see y'all soon.
2 weeks.
Bye.